We're gonna get this thing kicked off for real, and then we'll get back to chatting because today is a teaching chat, as we will get to in a second. Hi everyone, I'm Don Saucer. I'm the Faculty Associate Director of our Teaching and Learning Center. I'm so excited you found your way to our professional development series, and as you do every week, we're gonna begin with a land acknowledgement.
Don, just give me a thumbs up whenever you see it. Okay, cool. Here we go.
As the first land-grant institution established under the 1862 Morrill Act, we acknowledge that the state of Kansas is, historically, home to many native nations, including the Kaw, Osage, and Pawnee, among others. Furthermore, Kansas is the current home to 4 federally recognized native nations: the Prairie Band Potawatomi, the Kickapoo Tribe of Kansas, the Iowa Tribe of Kansas and Nebraska, and the Sac and Fox Nation of Missouri in Kansas and Nebraska.
Many native nations utilized the western plains of Kansas as their hunting grounds, and others, such as the Delaware, were moved through this region during Indian removal efforts to make way for white settlers. It's important to acknowledge this, since the land that serves as the foundation of this institution was, and still is, stolen land.
We remember these truths because K-State's status as a land-grant institution is a story that exists within ongoing settler colonialism and rests on the dispossession of indigenous peoples and nations from their lands. These truths are often invisible to many. The recognition that K-State's history begins and continues through indigenous contexts is essential.
Please remember
These truths,
because we still remember.
Thank you. Our professional development series meets every Wednesday at noon. We run noon to about 12:50. We're trying to get out a little bit early, get everyone to their 1 o'clock appointments this year. And we archive all of our events on our webpage. So if you have a colleague who needs to see some of these events, they can do so asynchronously. And for those of you watching asynchronously, hey, I hope you're doing great. We have the opportunity for you to earn a professional development certificate if you are a faculty member, staff member, or a GTA. And we have the information for that available in the chat. If not now, soon. Oh, it's in the chat because Ashley is super quick with those fingers. So Ashley, get that into the chat. All the information for becoming a TLC professional development certificate earner is there. It also has the information if you're a faculty member for becoming a TLC fellow, which is something that is awesome. And it probably means you get to present in our professional development series next year. So that would be fantastic for everybody involved. So definitely check those things out. We have a number of events left this semester, which I think are going to be awesome and important. Next week's event is going to be me. I'm going to be talking about TVALs 101. For those of you who have been at K-State a little while, you know that TVALs is how we typically collect student perception data of our teaching. We'll talk about what that means and what it does not mean in that event next week. It is something that raises a little anxiety and consternation, and I hope to kind of unmystify some of that process next week. But this week we have a teaching chat. We were supposed to have a different event. Our presenter couldn't go. So we're going to have a teaching chat, which is good because we don't have many teaching chats the rest of the semester. In fact, this might be our last one. We had a lot of presentations to kind of make space for. So today's the last day. We kind of just get to kind of sit and chat about what is meaningful for us, the issues and concerns that we have. And what I wanted to actually do, and I'm kind of in charge, so I get to decide. What I wanted to do was I wanted to start with wins. This is something that I do in a lot of my group meetings, a lot of my meetings with my undergraduate and graduate students. We just kind of go around and say something that's going well. I think especially during the mid-semester, it is real easy to get caught in that stuff we need to commiserate about. So I do think once in a while we should at least devote a little bit of time to celebration. So I was hoping we could each share a win that we were kind of experiencing. And I can go first to model this. I'm a big fan of mid-semester evaluation, where you kind of ask your students how things are going. So last week I asked them, how's this class going? What's your experience? I asked them to describe the experience in class with one word. Almost all the words were positive, and 65% of my students in my 200-person class were there to tell me that, and they did it in an anonymous survey. One person said boring, but like 100 said engaged, so I was more happy about that response. And at the end, I said, are there any comments, concerns, and those kind of things? And my favorite comment was one person said, "Nah, we good." So I was like, all right, that's pretty good to know that they're having a pretty positive experience. We had some rating scale stuff too that also indicated they're probably doing well. So I'm counting that as a win. And especially when you're teaching a big class with 200 or so people in it, sometimes you're not sure. So it was good for me to see that at least the ones who were responding and who were in class that day seemed to say we're good. Now, no one said, "Now we good, brah." I haven't got called brah in a while. But yeah, Andy points out it's funny how one negative comment stands out among the other 199 positive ones. That is the one that completely popped up. I actually made a word cloud, and that was just kind of lurking down over there, and I was like, ah, you know. But most of them seemed to be having a really good experience, and that was awesome. Ooh, Kathleen said Wynn successfully defended dissertation. So Dr. Haas, congratulations. That is fantastic. Probably should have had you go last because that's going to be hard to top as we go through. We might have Ashley go last because she's got kind of a cool one that was actually public this morning in K-State today. We'll let Ashley kind of tell what that is in just a little bit. But if we don't mind, if we're willing to kind of unmute, if you can't unmute, you can drop it in the chat. We can go in the order that I see you. Natalie, I see you next.
I thought you might, and I was reflecting on this. It's not completed, but I think my biggest win and what people are probably sick of me talking about is we're invited in to do a really fascinating project in Logan, Kansas, because they school with a nursing home. And so it was a completely unexpected project, but it is so exciting to kind of step into the idea of rural research and getting back into my childhood research roots, because I have not done child research for a while since the dissertation. And so getting back into that is exciting.
Excellent. That is amazing. For those of you who have joined in the meantime, we're going around sharing wins because I think it's important to have positive moments, even in the mid-semester. Andy, I see you next.
So I'm going to follow along the same lines as Natalie because it is engagement week here at K-State. My win is a project that I am working on for my course next semester. I'm going to be teaching a course on bilingualism, and I got strengths that they find in being bilingual in their community and what that of the assets that it brings and some of the challenges, and then connect course concepts to what they heard in those interviews. And this week I have been connecting with different community partners, and it's been really exciting to chat about it. And I actually just got an email from a colleague that said that they're talking about it in the big chat today. They're talking about the project that I'm working on, which was really exciting. So I'm really excited to bring my students into that and get to work out with rural communities, particularly because a lot of the work on bilingualism is centered around urban centers. So New York, Miami, Chicago, and LA. And there's just very little research on bilingualism in rural communities. So I'm very excited.
No idea you did. I knew you were awesome, but I didn't know kind of the domains to which your awesomeness stretched. So that is fantastic. The next person just took a bite, so I'll go to Ted.
Can you guys hear me all right? Having
Yes.
using headphones. Awesome, sweet. Yeah, I'll say my win for this week is that we actually just got IRB approval for an undergrad's project that they've been developing over the last year or so. So excited to finish up the Qualtrics over this week and hopefully start data collection on that pretty soon.
And those of you who might not know this, Ted took a very, very strong mentoring role on that project. The student is in their third semester of college. They joined our team as a first-year student. So getting to the point is a real big achievement. And so that is awesome, Ted. Maria, I think you've done your bye. Right, so you're going to be next on the list.
I would say my you saw me yesterday running on the Hudson Trail. So I found
Oh, that was you. I'm so sorry.
It's
Stickman, Maria, and I. We do describe very similar. Congratulations on being very fast.
been had a chance to do cases, so I'm glad that I was able to make time, get away from the office and get out. So that was my win.
I was describing this experience. I was like, I thought it was you, but you had like a hat, and glasses, and stuff. So it was like, excellent pair. You were flying.
So Maria, sometimes AS, so line, I'm going to say a few words, and I brave and did that. And afterwards, I thought, and so I found some really cool sign language tools on YouTube from desk. So just to expand on it.
Just improvement. Love you.
So
You're next.
appreciating
University of Kansas, and they recently asked to addition with so that American religious right, and it's about a 6 she spent doing ethnographic research with Westboro Baptist Church in Topeka. So it appeared before the Supreme Court, and so I went was about funeral pickets. It's about hate and ideology and I just talked to a lot of editors, so I very to stuff happening. I had already been doing that kind of work as an undergraduate, working with Mist Baptist Church. I just holy grail of extremist religion. I had to go check it out on like I went on and I was pregnant. I was like, I know happy to talk about motherhood and how great that is. I'm gonna get like it or corsage. Like I know right-wing religion pretty well. And it was way more intense than I thought it was gonna be. And so and then opened up a lot of questions about particularly their funeral picketing was different than anything I had seen. So, and I didn't always handle it very well. They during my research time, there was and families I knew. My grandparents worked in that community as Amish school drivers. A very good friend of my high school is married to the shooter, and Westboro Baptist announced they were going to picket it. And that took me off my work for about maybe 4 to 6 months, as I had to really rethink what did it mean for this group to picket people I loved, which I had been prepared for because I had two, a sister-in-law and a brother-in-law who were both active duty during the War on Terror. And so we had already discussed as a family what would happen, right, if one of those was killed in the line of duty, and they're both from Kansas. So we would have known Westboro Baptist would have showed up to their funerals. But I hadn't been prepared for what happens when they show up at a funeral in my hometown. So that it did knock me down for a little bit. So I did not always stay grounded. I guess that is the answer to that question.
Yeah, as others are saying, this is interesting. This is fascinating. If you don't mind sharing the link in the chat, I'd be very interested in checking this out.
Thanks.
So,
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
Thanks. I will do that.
awesome. The other people don't have their cameras on. I'll give them the opportunity if they would like to share a win, either in the chat or out loud. But I understand this is, the lunchtime. You might be doing other things, not in a position to do that. So I'll just pause for a second. Oh, you are here. Okay. Hi.
Hi, everyone. My name is Farida, and just being here is one of my wins. And I'm grateful to be a teaching assistant this semester, all the experiences and all the learnings from this platform, which I'm actually applying. These are my wins. And also I'm grateful because I get to meet people from different cultures each and every day, and it's an increase in knowledge. So these are the things I would say are my wins for this semester.
Excellent. Well, thank you for being here. We appreciate you taking part in our chats today.
Thank you.
Anyone else online would like to share a win? All right. We know Dr. Haas already shared theirs, so that's fantastic. Now, Ashley, do you have any wins?
I have a couple, but I'll go with the one that Don teed up for me. So you may have seen it in the K-State Today announcement, but I recently won the UDP Doctoral Excellence Award. So that was very exciting, and I am very grateful to have that support, especially to collect data for my dissertation.
So we knew Ashley was awesome, but she's awesome in all the ways, and that's just another one. And we're super excited for Ashley. Super well deserved. So again, I want to kind of say doing this, and this is something I do often with my teams and in my classes, is celebrating wins is important. And like one of you said, though, it's a small win. All wins are wins, right? It's every win is a win. And I think sometimes our students need to kind of realize that sometimes their win is they came to class that day, right? That's a win. Just being here is a win. And I think sometimes when October is knocking us down and knocking our students down, reminding them that even those things that they think are little are actually real accomplishments. So taking those moments to celebrate. I know, Carrie, you do mindfulness activities and your classes and those kind of things, but taking these moments, I think really do kind of show that K-State's supposed to be a health promoting university, that maybe we actually understand what that means. And I wanted to transition to my next kind of question. We recently had Wildcat Pause Day. For those of you who are new to K-State, this is a new thing, and this is a temporary thing for now. So what had happened is many, many years ago, like KU still does, we had 2 days of fall break kind of in October, and then we had 3 days off during the week that Thanksgiving happens. So we had, Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday in October, and then we had the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday off over the week of Thanksgiving. And what happened is students weren't coming on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, whatever. So they weren't coming those days. So I believe it was an SGA proposal, but I could be wrong. It might have come from Senate, but both organizations were involved and said, you know what, let's just take the whole week of Thanksgiving off and we'll give back those 2 days. And then what happened is after we did that for a few years, we said, this is a really long semester. And especially now that we have a semester where we're coming back after fall break into dead week, it's a really, really long break with really no reprieve. So Student Government Association last year said, you know what, we need a day off. So they called it Wildcat Pause Day. And I think initially they wanted 2, but they thought maybe 1 would kind of come through. And interim provost Mercer at the time was like, I really like this, but Senate's got to sign off. So it came to faculty senate where I am. I don't know if there's other senators here too. It was contentious. And basically the compromise that was reached is that rather than having a permanent Wildcat Pause Day in the fall, we have a temporary Wildcat Pause Day for 3 years. And in that 3 years, we get to kind of evaluate, how did it go? Did it do the things that we wanted to do? Is it worth the time away from class that students might have on that Friday, for instance? And to see if we're going to do this longer term. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to kind of visit with y'all and kind of think about, what were your thoughts on Pause Day? Did you know about it? Did your students know about it? Did it come at the right time? Did it do maybe what it was supposed to do? Was it worth taking, hours away from class, which is, the chief kind of obstacle that people have put is it takes away class times. And if you have like week labs, your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday lab meet, but your Friday lab doesn't, and that might get your whole lab schedule kind of off. So I want to just kind of open it up to kind of see what people felt about Pause Day. And by the way, I'm on the leadership and assessment committee. So what you're giving me is information I'm going to take back to that committee to kind of let them know what faculty are thinking.
I am so glad you brought this up, Don, because it was the question I was actually going to ask to everybody if we didn't have something to discuss. So I'm seeing it mostly as a supervisor of student workers because I just teach one class this semester. It's a once a week Tuesday class. And so my class wasn't really affected, although I did pause on giving them a homework assignment due at the end of the weekend as was suggested if possible. So pretty minimal from my side as an instructor. But as someone who supervises 7 student workers in 7 different majors, I saw varying degrees of success depending on how their instructors handled it. Some people, I had one student who ended up with 5 exams crammed into 4 days right before week. That was the worst example. And I had students who there really wasn't any difference at all, except that they didn't go to class. I don't think that student workers were considered in this pause day. So my office just made our decision, well, we can't pay them if they don't work, but if they want off, they absolutely can have the day off if they want to pick up extra hour. So we worked with it in our office, but I don't know how that was handled across the university. And if it truly was a pause day, I think we had to take that in consideration. But since student workers don't earn vacation leave, it was a financial decision for some students. So they may or may not have actually gotten a break. If it were up to me, and I'm sure there's issues with this I'm not thinking of, the semester should start earlier and we should have a week built in like we do with spring break. It's a longer time period from January through end of May, and you got that week thrown in there. I know Thanksgiving does make it tough. So I'm not really going to say if I think that should be 2 days or 3 days or 5 days or whatever. I don't have a super strong opinion on that, but it does come, as I think probably most of us know, it comes so late in the semester that it helps students kind of push through to the end, but it doesn't really give them the break that they need. I think a 1-day break isn't long enough to make a substantial impact on students. I did have some students say, well, now I can go home for the weekend because it's a 5-hour drive for me, and that was really helpful to them. Or, oh, now I can go to the Colorado game that's out of town. But I don't really see that it, for many students, ended up serving the purpose it was intended to serve because it just wasn't a whole lot. I think the initiative was good, because I do think we're trying it as an institution to say we care about your overall health and well-being. So I think it was a nice gesture, but I just don't think the impact was very much.
Okay, I appreciate that feedback. And it's not the first time I've heard that feedback, unfortunately. Yes, Andy.
So I would say I agree with a lot of the things that Melissa said. One of the big issues with Thanksgiving break, it's nice in theory to have a full week off, but with it being so close to the end of the semester, I feel like it really is a disservice to the students. And when they come back to class after Thanksgiving, it's really hard to get them back on track and ready for the final exams. And that's when it's after week 13. And so this semester, with us coming right back into dead week, I'm foreseeing that it's going to be super challenging. I also feel that the Wildcat Pause Day was not well messaged. And so it was very unclear, particularly from faculty staff perspective, what is it we're supposed to be pausing? I know that I had students saying that they still had professors that were assigning work that day, homework to be completed, even though they weren't supposed to be. yeah, it was just very unclear, like, is this pause day for everyone? I think that it would benefit us to decide, like, is this a day off or isn't it? But the pause makes it very unclear as to, like, what is it that we're supposed to be doing? How is it we're supposed to be using this day? And is it also for faculty who also really need a catch-up moment, a moment to catch our breath in the middle of the semester? So I fully agree that I think it would benefit us to even if it were just, like, we start the semester 2 or 3 days earlier and then have a few days off mid-semester. I think that would, just 2 or 3 days and then another few days in for Thanksgiving, I think would go a really long way. And I think that would also help us, like Melissa said in the chat, I think that there's this holiday creep. And so it's like, if you have for Thanksgiving, if you give them Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, they're going to take Tuesday. They might take Monday and Tuesday. But when you give them the whole week, then they're like, oh, I'm going to take off Friday too. And you're like, you have 9 days. So I could go on and on. I will let other people talk, but those are some of my strong feelings. Last thing, it made the work week, what Melissa was saying, 4 days, 5 days work in 4 days. And sometimes it really kind of felt like more. So it really felt like it made the week more intense rather than less. And so by the time Friday came around, I didn't even really register it as a pause day because I was just so beat that, like, I needed that full day just to, like, recover and become a human again.
So I was teaching an 8-week class that was scheduled to end on Friday, and that's how the classes started. And then we were told, don't end it on Friday, end it on Thursday. So that those 8-week classes already don't have the final weekend for coursework. So looking at it and saying, like, I don't want my students to cram 5 days of work into 4 days, I had to cancel an assignment. And that was fine. I made an optional assignment, and then students could take, like, the highest. They just got to drop one. So students can skip it if they wanted to. But I'm guessing that most of my colleagues didn't think about it that way. I also think it's really important that we don't assign work over that weekend. So we're not just really losing Friday for class time. I don't want my students to have to come back on Monday, even having the typical work that I would have usually assigned over a weekend, because I don't want it to just be 1 day off. I want it to be 3 days off. So it felt like a bigger loss than just 1 day. That said, when Thanksgiving is so late, it really is brutal. And this is a much bigger, I have 2 suggestions that are much bigger. I would like us to see us end the week, just go home at Thanksgiving. And like, we could go to a trimester system, have an intensive option for students to do a January 6-week, 4-week, 8-week class. I know we're talking a lot at the university level about being adaptive, I think we should be a year-round school so that students can pop in whenever they need to. But I think then we wouldn't be losing those students, because as a good student, I don't know why I would come back for finals, especially if it was all papers, and that has impact on housing, it has impact on the cafeteria and student life. So if we started earlier and just ended at Thanksgiving, then we could have like a 1-week break somewhere in the middle that I feel like, I think it could be built into it. And I know that, again, that's a much bigger picture. And then I'll offer a different way of thinking about it. At my undergraduate, we had an event. I went to school in the central Pennsylvania, up in the Allegheny Mountains. And we had something called Mountain Day, which was a surprise closure of the school 1 day every fall. And we snuck out and it was college-wide, so all faculty and staff. Now the cafeteria workers didn't really get it off because they hauled everything out for a giant picnic at the lake. And it actually celebrated an event many years ago when I think there had been maybe smallpox or something. There was a health issue on campus. Campus went to quarantine, and there had been some students who had already snuck off campus and were playing hooky and got caught off campus and couldn't get returned. So we memorialized that event with a giant day at the lake. And I think that kind of maybe belongs to like KSU's belonging initiative. or KSU Unite. Like, I'd love to see us have a company picnic, maybe especially if it's not like around football so much. Is it homecoming? So it's not geared towards our alumni or our donors, and would be more of a fun time. And then the final thought I'll share, I don't love framing this as a mental health break, because I don't want us to get into thinking that life is something that we have to take a break from. I think that we should maybe pull to the idea of like, how do we make life sustainable, and that rest is part of that. And so I ask, and also like mental health breaks have to happen when we individually need them. So you can't really schedule a mental health break, right? So like my mental health needs don't come at like on the date that the university sets. But also I want my job to not be pushing me to the point when I have to take a day off work to get caught up, because like it should be manageable as we're living it.
So there's a lot in both what you and Andy before you had said. I do want to kind of give a little bit of information on some of the things, and I may not remember all of my thoughts. I tried to jot down as we went through. So both of you kind of mentioned, what about faculty and staff, right? Because it was very, very clear throughout this was a student day off. It was not a university holiday. And what that actually did is it kind of, and people have given me this feedback, said, well, you don't care about us as much as you care about the students, and we might also need a break too. And we've also kind of indicated, as a couple of you said, we're going to use that break to actually do our jobs in many cases to kind of get caught up, but without having a meeting or a class to kind of detract from the schedule on that Friday. So there was a little bit of, myopic perspective perhaps, and focusing on the students there. What that did then is had a little bit of an issue that, faculty meetings and things like that still happened. And sometimes some students were expected to attend those. So for instance, I had a student in one of my classes say they're the graduate representation on their faculty meetings. Their faculty meetings still meant, so they had pause day, but they still had to represent their colleagues at a faculty meeting that happened on that Friday because faculty were not off. It also, being a Friday, was the smallest pause, right? So it actually created the last amount of academic disruption by being a Friday, which meant that the fewest people actually had benefit from pause day, which is something that was part of the concession in getting this to happen, is people wanted the least amount of disruption to the academic schedule. So they then ironically picked the smallest pause. So that became a bit of an issue kind of happening there. There have been some other calendar revisions discussed. To my knowledge, we're not thinking in terms of trimesters as an option, but I'm not on the calendar committee, so I can't tell you that for sure. But I do know that people have been thinking about different semester start times, and do we have a much longer break between the fall and spring semester by getting done by Thanksgiving? Those of you who remember COVID-19 who were here for then, what we did is we ended in-person operations at Thanksgiving break, and then everything after Thanksgiving break, so any remaining class time and any final exam or things like that would happen in an online venue. I don't know that people are considering that as a university mandate, but people are trying to be creative. I think there is enough of a critical mass to realize that while we shouldn't necessarily need a break from life, sometimes we kind of do, and trying to figure out ways to kind of keep us all healthy as we do so. One of the things that has come up in the conversations in Wildcat Pause Day too is, how are faculty, staff, and administrators modeling their own healthy behaviors? Because I'm not going to say that I'm always the most healthy all the time in my work-life balance or any of those kinds of things. So, what are our students seeing us do? And if they're seeing us, like as one of my colleagues said, the best part about being an academic is you work 80 hours a week, but you get to pick which 80, kind of thing. So if we're doing that, if our students are seeing us do that, are they really saying, hey, there's no way that anyone can kind of be successful in our society at this time with any degree of self-care, any degree of care for our mental or physical well-being. So I've taken a lot of notes on things that people said, and I talked a lot there. I apologize for that. Other thoughts?
Mine, may I add something? I appreciate the attention or the bringing up like that needed to be explained better, because there was such a big deal made out of it. And it was one day. It was like the university was like super proud, we are giving you one day. And now that you explained it, like it's temporary, they're trying to see if it works. That's what with all the before and after surveys were about. Okay, duh, that makes sense why it was such a big deal. But without knowing that, I was just like, God, you guys are really patting yourselves on the back for one friggin' day off that I already naturally give my students off half the time anyway, because Fridays are often optional class days. So I was just like, all right, you guys are proud. But that was just my feedback that is different, or in addition to what everybody else said, which I pretty much agree.
And unfortunately, that was many people's perception. It was a day off, and who kind of cares? It was actually a week-long slate of events, and I don't think we necessarily got that out there as well as it could be. For instance, I don't know if you knew this, but you had free rec for that week, if you wanted to go work out there or those kinds of things. And we had a lot of advantages and privileges in that week that we wouldn't otherwise necessarily have. And that took a lot of negotiation and a lot of wheels to make those things happen. But unless you knew to go to the webpage and look, you didn't necessarily know about those. But we had swag we were giving out, and all these different kinds of things. And I think it was a little bit underdeveloped because it started really, really late. For instance, our leadership team was mobilized in August. So it was kind of at that point we said, all right, we're gonna make this thing happen. And we gotta go and do the thing. Yeah, someone says, it's awesome that we don't always have access to our own university gym. That's interesting. We also have to pay to park. So, I mean, it's really not that surprising that we don't get to use the gym for free when I can't park at my place of business for free. So, yeah, I'm digressing.
I
slightly.
refuse to pay for a parking permit on principle, which is a real pain in the ass for me.
So do you
But
just like park illegally? What do you do?
I bike or I get a ride from my husband. Sometimes I walk, which is a long walk because I live like 3 miles from where I work. But I, on principle, refuse. I don't care how out of the way I have to go. I'm not paying to park.
So that kind of takes care of the gym membership need then, doesn't it?
There you go. That's
Yeah.
So I will say one other thing that had occurred to me in one of Rebecca's comments. It would stress me out so much if they just sprang a day off out of nowhere. That would destroy me. Psychologist hat on. The two most stressful things are the things that are not predictable and not controllable, and that's both. So that would stress me out. So that wouldn't work for me, but I get why that's a cool surprise potentially. But yeah.
I'm
Yes, it is
curious.
punishing those of us who plan the most, as Rebecca just said in the chat. I'm sorry, Melissa, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm curious if it's been talked about to simply whether encourage or require faculty to build in a break just within their own class. And part of the reason I think that might be effective is because different classes have different times that are useful to pause, or different ways to pause, especially if you don't have a Monday, Wednesday, Friday class. It's not necessarily a break. You can get a feel for when your students need it. If you don't want to schedule it in August, you can throw it in there and say, you know what, y'all are burnt out. We just did a huge project, no class Friday. And then it's like Rebecca was talking about, it's that sustainable well-being. Sometimes if somebody reaches a point of overwhelm, everything needs to stop. But to avoid getting there, or if you've kind of recovered from that and you're back into maintenance phase, having lots of different breaks from different classes at different times might actually be more useful to students. And that doesn't have to be coordinated, because that's the likelihood that all 4, 5, 6 of their classes are going to line up with breaks at the same time is pretty darn low. So or offering that programming. I know we already have programming throughout the semester, but really encouraging students, about that well-being. Or this week, it's not for students, but free rec. Or this week, go see, Inside Out 2, I think was one of the things during the day, But I wonder if that's just part of the policy where, or maybe the instructor says, you know what, you get 1 free absence related to mental health and you take it when you need it, or you get, an extension. I mean, I do this kind of stuff anyway, but I feel like there might be ways of doing it that work better, because I was hearing from people who didn't know well in advance. One person that I know who has a huge lecture class and gives evening exams and has to reserve like 4 or 5 different rooms, and they have to do that a semester or 2 ahead of time. They had an exam scheduled the Monday after this break, but it was announced and they could not logistically change it at that point. So they did what they could, but they would have been happy to give a break a different week, or the Friday after that. So I don't know if that was talked about. I know it's harder to enforce, but
it was, and that was actually offered as an alternative to pause day. And my statement on that was you should do that anyway, and then pause day should be something extra. That was my kind of statement on that. And for those of you who remember me talking about empathetic course design, I think we should do this in our classes. For instance, in my graduate class, election day is a well-being day for a couple of reasons. Number one, I don't want my class to be the barrier to you voting and engaging in that kind of part of your civic responsibilities. Number two, election day is going to be stressful for a lot of people. So, I want to, give you the opportunity to spend that day doing what you need to be doing. And I scheduled that. But I also have a very flexible attendance policy in my classes where if you need a day, you reach out to me and I'll excuse you and we'll work with that. So I think we should be doing those things anyway. And I don't think having a pause day takes away the obligation to, in other ways, be empathetic to our students. And Melissa, I know you do all these things because you're an awesome person, but a lot of our colleagues don't, and that creates a little bit of an issue. I will say too that part of our hope, and this is why we're doing the assessment over 3 years, is this first one I think took people by surprise. So what we're kind of hoping is that as it becomes a little bit more of a K-State expectation, a little bit more part of our culture and our climate, that we'll do a better job about preparing for pause day and making it something that is going to be more beneficial for our students. But when it is all said and done, right, it's not even going to be the same Friday. What we've kind of done is we've said we're targeting about the 7th Friday of the semester. But I believe it's the provost who's empowered to kind of make that call. And as one of you said in the chat earlier, our football schedule is going to be part of that call, and kind of figuring out when it's going to make the most sense to do that. So it's not even going to be that if you're teaching a fall semester class, it's always your 7th Friday that's going to be off. It might be your 6th, it might be your 9th, depending on the other things that is on the university calendar.
Do they
I
not
wanted
know
to-
that we teach things like every term? And
They,
that we
they are aware.
plan them
They
in a
are
certain
aware
way?
that we teach.
I'm just curious if they've ever taught a class before.
I will also say I'm one of the only faculty members on the leadership team. And I'm not on the leadership team because I'm a faculty member. I'm a leadership team because I run the TLC. So it's something where I'm one of the only voices that's kind of saying it. There are students on that team. And I'll say that the students have been fantastic in kind of talking about what's going to make sense with them. And the students on there are officers and SGA. So these are not students who are just looking to get days off. They're very aware of their educational needs, their academic goals, their career goals and planning and all of that. So they are looking for something that minimizes disruption and maximizes effect. So it has been a very good team, but it's been a pretty small team. And as we collect kind of more data and start to figure out more of the side effects and consequences of what pause day can be and should be, I think we'll do a better job. But I was happy with how it went this first year, but I won't say that I was necessarily thrilled yet.
I just wanted to add that I really liked the idea of the week, like sharing tools and helping them. I just think that the messaging, it could be so much stronger so that it's much more clear what the point is, and the idea that we're giving them tools maybe to be more successful in that area that they wouldn't normally have. But I liked the idea. I did also, until right before that, I didn't know what any of the week's activities were going to be, or it would be nice to have that and much more in advance so you could plan. I don't know. The students could plan.
Yeah, no, I think we'll hopefully get better at those kind of things. I'm sorry, I actually felt bad for a second. I read Ashley's comment in the chat that they used pause day to get flu and COVID shots, and then that beat them up, so they were kind of off all weekend. So I'm glad you did that, but I'm sorry that it kind of laid you up after that. I'm trying to catch up with some of the other comments in the chat. Yeah, I like the fact Maria had kind of students do reflections about what they did over pause day. It's really gratifying to see that they did some cool self-care kinds of things. Often what I'll do when I have well-beings in my class, I'll have what I call a well-being quiz. So it's like, tell me in one sentence what you did. And I'll actually have points associated with that. Usually it's actual real points in my class that's associated with like weekly points or quiz points or something like that. So it's not extra credit because I want it to be something that they do, not something they do above and beyond. So it's kind of a cool thing that we can do there. So thumbs up or down on pause day for next year. What do we think? All right, we got mostly thumbs up. We got like a crooked thumb. We got a thumb that's kind of going crooked and all the way up. All right. Um, One of the things that I will do is I will bring this feedback back, and I'll actually if people are, well, these are public anyway, but I'll ask the members of the leadership team to potentially view our conversation, because I think the things that you're saying are not idiosyncratic comments. These are really good representative comments from other conversations I've had with people on campus. And I think they listen when I tell them, but I think they listen more when other people say the same things that I said they said. So I think that will be helpful in kind of doing this up. Someone said I could never pass up a free day. You know, I would have agreed until the beginning of last spring semester, when we had too many free days at the beginning of the semester, and I got a hold real quick. We had snow days and cybersecurity attacks and all of those kind of things, and that made my Tuesday, Thursday classes really kind of rough. So I would normally agree, except that was the case that I'm still suffering a little bit from in the memories.
Yeah, I had that one time when I was at UMass doing my grad program. We had a spring where every Monday for the first 6 weeks of the semester, we had a huge snowstorm that took out Monday and sometimes also Tuesday. And so I had a colleague who was teaching a Monday only class, and they did not start meeting until week 7 of the semester.
Yeah, that can be
That
rough.
gets problematic.
I taught at the Community College of Vermont when I was a graduate student to get some more teaching experience, make a little money on the side. And their rules were about contact minutes. So what happened, and it's Vermont, it snows a lot, right? So if we had a snow day, they extended your remaining classes to get the contact minutes back. And by the end of the semester, my classes were running 3 hours and 45 minutes long each, twice a week. So it was a lot to get those contact minutes in. So I'm grateful here. We don't yet have the need to do that. Amazingly, we are about out of time. I really enjoyed the conversation. I really enjoyed hearing about your wins. I really enjoyed the feedback about Pause Day. I'll take them back to our leadership and assessment committee. Want to remind you that next week I'll be talking about TVALs. So tell your colleagues to come to the conversation, talk about what those are and what they're not. Hopefully, unlike last year, the PowerPoints will work. I think what we're going to do, Ashley, I'm going to send them to you so you can click if it doesn't work on mine for whatever reason. Never had that problem before since I was just kind of cursed that day. We'll talk about TVALs 101 next week. We got a lot of other great events coming up. Professional development certificates are available. Becoming a fellow is available. This event will be archived. You can check it out asynchronously later. And a post-event survey has just been dropped in the chat. So please check that out. I'll stick around for a second if anything has anything else that they need to talk about. But otherwise, thank you so much for sharing some time for us today. And I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. Bye, y'all.